Good morning, everyone. So just a few days ago, we were planning on doing this exact same thing. It was this past Friday. And unfortunately, like everything else in this city and in parts of the state that's overrun by violent crime, we were pulled away to do our jobs. We were happy at that moment to go ahead and cancel this event because one of our brothers in blue needed our help and our assistance. But it kind of emphasizes the irony of doing a Billboard presentation on violent crime that gets interrupted by violent crime. So good morning, I am Special Agent Raul Bujanda, the FBI Albuquerque office, responsible for the state of New Mexico. So in a couple of weeks, it's going to be my 1-year anniversary of moving into the state, becoming a new resident. And there's a lot of great things about this state. And the one thing that I hate, and I truly hate, is all this violent crime. And it's not one of those things that it makes me angry, sure, at times, but it makes me frustrated more than anything that a lot of people are just feeling like this is something we got to accept. And that's so far from the truth. But the one good thing is that I have many partners that are here with us today that also share in the same sentiments that I share, and that we want to do something that's going to send a message but also improve our day-to-day. So we live, we work, and we play within these communities just like the rest of you. Our children go to school here in Albuquerque just like yours as well. And we want to make sure that their communities are safe. So with me today we have U.S. Attorney Fred Federici. We have Albuquerque Police Chief Harold Medina. Manny Gonzales, Sheriff for Bernalillo County Sheriffs. New Mexico State Police Secretary Jason Bowie. And not standing up here with us, but also here in the crowd, is Veronica Garcia from Clear Channel Outdoor. And there's many, many other partners that are kind of standing behind all of you and that are with us in spirit. So we're working together to turn the tide of crime. Unfortunately, it seems that lawbreakers on the streets haven't gotten the message. I'm here today to make something clear to the violent offenders who think they are beyond the reach of justice. Your time has run out. To the long-suffering victims who have waited for justice, we hear you, we're listening, and we're doing something about it. Today, the FBI is announcing the launch of a digital billboard campaign focused on a simple yet powerful message, and we will back it up. Gun crime equals federal time, no parole. Let me say it again, it's real simple. Gun crime equals federal time, no parole. It's not a slogan, it's a promise. We want to increase the public's awareness that the FBI, special agents, intelligence analysts, the U.S. Attorney's Office, and our many partners that are standing with me here today and elsewhere are ready and willing to prosecute all these allegations and criminal acts that are happening on a daily basis on the federal platform. Federal prosecution means higher conviction rates, tougher sentences, no early release, and a long time in a prison cell away from home. So I think a lot of people don't actually see this, or maybe they're not aware, so that's what we want to emphasize today. That those APD officers, those BCSO sheriff's deputies, those U.S. Marshals, those name the agency, APD, whatever agency is out there, a lot of them are already working with us. They're what we call task force officers. So some of these offenders might think twice if they realize that drugstore they robbed or the car they took at gunpoint might wind up as a federal investigation. I had a high-ranking police officer tell me that back when we had done this previously, this type of similar campaign, that the one thing that the offenders would tell them is, whatever you do, don't turn me over to the feds. So let's turn them over to the feds. What kind of violent crimes are we talking about? Felons in possession of firearms or ammunition. Violating the Hobbs Act, which covers robbery, extortion that affects interstate commerce, which includes drug and grocery store chains. Carjacking, kidnapping, bank robberies, and many, many more things. If we can make a federal connection, we're going to make it. Since 2019, the FBI Violent Crime Gang Task Force has made almost 500 federal arrests, executed nearly 300 search warrants, and taken just shy of 350 weapons off the streets, and just a few more yesterday. The task force is made up of federal, state, and local officers who are federally deputized by the FBI to enforce federal statutes and present investigations to the U.S. Attorney's Office for prosecution. So I want to just send a clear message to all violent offenders. The next police officer, sheriff's deputy, or state police officer who puts handcuffs on you might know a friend or might be a task force officer themselves. So now you're looking at some serious time. These billboards are only the start of what will be a long-lasting and wide-ranging campaign. It is important we get the word out that negative actions have negative consequences. For the next 12 weeks, thousands of motorists are going to pass by this billboard and others here in Albuquerque to remind them of what it is that we're talking about here today. Also on the billboards is our toll-free number so that the community has a direct line of communication to us. As always, we are impacted as citizens. So if you know of someone that committed a crime, know someone that's going to commit a crime, please, as always, call local FBI office at 1-800-CALL-FBI. That information comes straight to us, even though it sounds like it doesn't. It comes directly to this office, or on the internet at tips.fbi.gov. As always, 911 is a resource for something that's happening immediately and right now. Again, gun crime equals federal time, no parole. It's a simple message, but one that I hope that resonates. I'll end on this. So, my abuelita always told me, if you follow God's signs, you will make good decisions. Well, this is a man-made sign, but it's inspired by the love that she had for not only me, but her community. And there was no gun, and no punk with a gun that was going to deter her from fighting for her community. And neither will we. So as always, thank you. And now I'm going to turn it over to Fred Federici, United States Attorney.
Thank you and good morning. My name is Fred Federici. I'm the United States Attorney for the District of New Mexico, and we really appreciate all of you joining us here today for this message. We think it's an important community message for all of us. And I first want to thank FBI Special Agent in Charge Raul Buhanda. He and his staff committed to this public awareness campaign, and we're happy to be with him here today and with all of our state and local partners. Now, getting the message on this billboard out to those who need to hear it is just one part of the Department of Justice's ongoing strategy to combat violent crime. And that's a strategy which I know you're going to be hearing more about in the months to come from the department. But combating violent crime is something to which the United States Attorney's Office has been over the last several years and is fully committed, as the SAC just told you. Our simple message today is targeted at felons who possess guns, carjackers, people holding up businesses with guns, bank robbers, and people trafficking drugs or committing other violent crimes and choosing to do that with guns. And our simple message to them is this: if you want to find yourself staring down the barrel of a federal indictment, then commit just one of the federal crimes that I just listed, and you will find yourself with a one-way ticket to federal court. So, for example, if you have spent time in the past in a jail cell or a prison cell wearing government-issued orange coveralls, and you get out and you still decide that it's a good idea to possess a gun, then know that you may well find yourself on the working end of a federal indictment. We have federal prosecutors standing by, ready to do just that. And let me be very clear about the potential federal penalties that just some of these crimes carry that are implicated by this billboard behind me. For example, if you illegally possess a firearm as a prohibited person, like a convicted felon, That's a federal crime punishable by up to 10 years in a federal prison. I'll let the trucks go by. And depending on the violence of your criminal history, you could be facing a mandatory minimum of 15 years in a federal prison cell for possessing that firearm. Or, if you decide to carry or use a firearm during a violent crime or a drug trafficking crime by federal law, you can face a minimum of 5 years in a federal prison and up to life in prison. And that's on top of the penalty that you're going to face for the underlying crime that's attached to it. And if you actually choose to brandish a firearm during that underlying crime, well then guess what? It's a minimum of 7 years in federal prison on top of the penalty for the underlying crimes. And if you are so foolish as to decide to discharge a firearm during such a crime, it's a minimum of 10 years that you might get to spend sitting in a federal prison on top of the penalty that you will get for the underlying crime. And finally, if you have certain prior convictions, you could be facing a minimal penalty as high as 25 years in a federal prison. And as our SAC just told us, offenders should also be aware that the FBI's Violent Crime Task Force, which we put together in Albuquerque, and by we, I mean everybody standing up here, the sheriff, APD, the FBI, the DPS, New Mexico State Police, everybody, and others, that the FBI Violent Crime Task Force that's been put together in Albuquerque is formidable. It includes federal, state, and local officers, and almost every single day, prosecutors from the U.S. Attorney's Office, who lead our Project Safe Neighborhood initiative, work together with our state counterparts to try to identify the most dangerous offenders. That's the goal here, to try to identify the most dangerous offenders on the streets of Albuquerque and find the most just and effective venue for prosecuting them. And those for whom the message on this billboard is intended should also be on notice that in the last few years we have developed the strongest working relationship that I know of in my 27 years of being a federal prosecutor in New Mexico. It's the strongest working relationship that we have ever had with our state and local counterparts in this district. And we are all fully committed to this fight. In fact, since mid-2017, we have literally brought hundreds of cases involving some of the most dangerous offenders arrested by the Albuquerque Police Department over to the U.S. Attorney's Office for federal prosecution. So these billboards should serve notice that those who need to hear it, that we are here to vigorously enforce federal criminal laws. Like you, all of us live here, all of us work here. Like you, all of our families live here, go to school here, and work here. And we do not think it's acceptable that there are criminals who think that they own the streets of Albuquerque, because they don't. Our families should not have to go to bed at night used to hearing police helicopters flying overhead trying to catch dangerous criminals or hearing gunshots from our backyards. So I can assure you that we are fully committed to doing everything we can to help our state counterparts restore the sense of safety that the people of Albuquerque so much deserve. So thank you. I'll turn it over to Chief Medina.
Good morning, everybody. I want to first thank our federal partners for joining us today and for everything they've done to help get this off the ground. I spent the first 14 years of my career on patrol. I was a boots-on-the-ground type of person through the rank of lieutenant. The vast majority of my time was spent on graveyard shift. I was one of those officers that had an individual in my police car that said, "Don't turn this case over to the feds." I distinctly remember one incident, 3500 Atrisco, Northwest. I pulled into a parking lot, reference an individual looking in cars. I confront the individual. I hear the distinct clunk of a gun hitting the ground. As I took this individual into custody and I placed him in the rear of my police car, he immediately, first words out of his mouth were, Sir, I've been seeing the advertisements of people going to jail for a long time. Will you please make sure that you only prosecute me or turn my case in at the state level? Of course, we turned the case over to our detectives, and they pursued the case as they saw fit. But I think it's important that we send a strong message. 80% of our homicides in 2021, which we know was a record year, were committed by a firearm, over 80%. We've had an increase in shootings in the metro area, and I think it's important that we continue to ensure that people are held accountable. Myself, Mayor Caller, have urged the state legislature to make sure that we get tough laws. We need laws that in the state of New Mexico that mirror those of our federal partners. We're hoping that our legislature listens not only to me, but to the people of Albuquerque. And like Fred said earlier, this is our city. We need to take our streets back. We need to make sure that criminals are well aware that the days of them running around and not facing consequences are coming to an end. We need to make sure that we do everything so your kids, my kids, all our nieces, nephews, anybody else that's involved in our city is safe to go out. We have to end this violence, and I want to thank our federal partners for stepping up, ensuring that they're taking as many cases as possible because they too have limited resources. And I hope that our legislators take notice and they see that we shouldn't always have to rely on our federal system. We should be able to police our own cities and have a strong criminal justice system that is going to ensure that there's accountability for those that are out there that are trying to injure and kill people within our community. I get it. We all see the need for substance abuse counseling. We all see the need for people not to be creating that pipeline into the prison system. But we also recognize that there is that line in the sand. And when somebody becomes violent, somebody is armed with a firearm, threatening the poor clerk working at a Home Depot, trying to tell them don't steal that drill, that person should sit in jail. And I'm glad that the federal system has teeth, and I hope that we could utilize them to the full ability to put the people behind bars and keep them there that need to stay there. Thank you for the time this morning. I'm going to turn it over to Sheriff Gonzales.
Thank you, Chief Medina. First of all, I'd like to congratulate our new Cabinet Secretary, Jason Bowie. Although we have some new people in administrations, just like the special agent in charge, what's not new is our commitment to collaborate. What we're here to do is re-energize and come together. There's never going to be a lack of commitment when it comes to the Sheriff's Department taking action. So in terms of the special agent's comments and being frustrated, the only way we're going to take care of those frustrations is by taking action. So you have our full commitment from the Sheriff's Office to continue to work together with all the agencies. And just like that unfortunate incident that happened last week, it all concerns us because our worst nightmares as heads of agency is somebody to be killed in the line of duty. And it's totally unacceptable. We've gotten to the point in this community that these criminals are so emboldened to want to pull firearms on fully uniformed police officers in broad daylight and shoot them is beyond me. And I have children just like most people up here or all of you and friends and people that I love in this community. And we will take action, and I will never, ever hesitate to give the full extent of the resources of the Sheriff's Office to any agency. That's what we're called to do. It's the right thing to do, and we want to make everybody in this community safe. So I appreciate everybody that's up here. I know they have their people fully committed, just as we do. And I couldn't be prouder or happier to work alongside these men and women that are willing to lay down their lives for your safety. So we're looking forward to continuing this initiative. This is really to put these people on notice that this is unacceptable. The work that we do will continue, and I'd like to thank for the invitation for the FBI, and I'll turn it over to the Cabinet Secretary right now to have a few words. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you for having us. I don't have any prepared remarks, and I'll just be real brief. We've always enjoyed a tremendous partnership with our federal partners, and something that we've always had a lot of success with. A lot of agencies throughout the state of New Mexico contribute to the task force, and what I want to just recognize just for a moment is those people that are working the streets every day. The ones that are in uniform typically get all the credit. Those are the ones that are most visible. They're out there seen. But there literally are hundreds of police officers out there in a lot of different plainclothes capacities really making sure that the communities are safe. And those officers don't often get the same credit as those in uniform do. Those men and women daily go out. They're really the silent heroes in the background. They don't want the credit out in public because of the job that they do, and I want to acknowledge them just for a moment. They are really out there each and every day putting themselves at tremendous risk to make sure that the most violent that would prey on our communities are taken into custody, and I just want to acknowledge them just for a moment. With that, thank you very much.
Okay. Is there any questions, anything that we could answer?
I have a question.
Sure.
Could someone provide some data on how many cases have been turned over from the state for federal prosecution each year, each month, some kind of way that we could handle on how many of these cases are turned over?
So I'll just talk from the FBI task force that we've had, and those were just the numbers I provided earlier. So since 2019, since we started this effort with our local partners, we're looking at about 500 federal arrests, 300 search warrants, and about 350 weapons, and unfortunately that's a number that increases on a daily basis that have been taken off the streets. I don't know, Fred, if you have any additional.
That's consistent with the numbers that we have.
Does a case have to be, does a task force officer have to be involved in order for it to be turned over to
No.
prosecution?
No.
Okay, so there could be more?
Sure. There could be something that's happening on the streets. The investigation units for those departments will go ahead and respond, and then we'll collaborate later and look at federal prosecution at that point. Yes.
This is for anybody, but it seems like RCD. But anyway, my question is a lot of these local agencies are bringing the feds in. It seems like their hands are tied. They're not tied, but the frustration has gotten to the point to bring the feds in, and there's not any help from the court systems here and getting maximum sentences. But there's a lot of minimums and a lot of time served. Can you guys speak on what the frustration is with getting those low amount of sentences with certain crimes?
So I'll definitely kind of turn that question, the bulk of that question, over to Manny and Harold to talk about, but anytime's a good time to bring in the feds. I'll just start with that, but then I'll turn it over to my partners.
Go ahead.
Well, that's a great question, and thank you for asking that. I think it's important we recognize that there is a frustration in law enforcement. My officers are frustrated every day. Last week we did a story where we had a juvenile that we arrested 4 times in 2021 for stealing motor vehicles. Those are 4 more victims that shouldn't have had to suffer that loss. That's the 4 times that we caught this individual. We had another individual, 80 residential burglaries. Let me repeat that, 80 residential burglaries. This person was considered not a threat to the community, was released on GPS, re-violated, and we actually picked them up doing another residential burglary. And now we've been able to, after 81 known burglaries, we're able to detain that individual. So yes, law enforcement is frustrated. This isn't an issue of us pointing fingers. This is an issue of us uniting. We need, whether it's the state legislature or local government, county government, we need everybody to work with one another, communicate, and see what's working, what's not working, and where we can make improvements. And I hope that we could look at the federal system and know that it's a deterrent. Our bait car program helped Albuquerque take stolen cars out of the top 10 for the first time in 2010-11 timeframe. A lot of that was based off of the advertisements that if you steal a car, it could be a bait car. It deterred people from committing crime. Strong sentences and federal prosecution is a deterrent from criminals. Every person who's worked the streets and dealt with these individuals know that. So there's a variety of reasons, and there's a lot of frustration, and law enforcement needs help from the feds. And like I stated earlier, we shouldn't be asking for help. We should be working as a state united to ensure that we're doing everything we can to protect the people of the city of Albuquerque and the state of New Mexico?
I think aside from having some of the issues with our criminal justice system in New Mexico, is that the silver lining and the frustration that I think you hear the chief say or some of the other stakeholders is that it did bring us together with our federal partners. So I'm going to tell you this, is that we didn't bring the feds in. They've been here the whole time. I think the blessing is that we've learned that there's value in working together, collaborating, and in many cases that where these criminals are literally getting away with crimes every day, is that we're being able to hold them accountable, and there is a deterrent in knowing that the feds are involved, and I think that's the message today. So I think it's pretty well known that this silver lining or this blessing for us as a community is that this partnership is probably like no other in the country, and I think that this should be kind of a model for other agencies to work alongside with federal partners to hold people accountable for crimes that are going on in their community. So that would be my answer to your question.
Go ahead.
For the chief, you mentioned somebody saw the billboard, yet they still carried a gun. Can you talk at all about the impact you hope that this makes? I mean, with a person still carrying a gun, that kind of defeats the purpose, right?
No, I think it's important we recognize that there is no one solution. There is nothing perfect, and we have to get away from that mindset as we go through this process. And if other individuals see an individual who goes away for an extended period of time, it without a doubt is a deterrent. And we go back to the bait car program. As people saw bait car video of individuals getting arrested and individuals going to jail for stealing a bait car, our bait car numbers went down. And I think that as this program goes forward and we're able to advertise arrests, advertise sentencing, and how people are being held accountable, it's going to send a message that we're serious this time, we have a process that works, and there's going to be consequences for your action.
Go ahead.
I think some people, especially families of homicide victims, will ask, why wasn't this done sooner? Do you feel it's a little too late? We had over 100 homicides.
So I think, like it was mentioned, this is something that's been in place. The sheriff mentioned this. This is not something that's starting new. Well, what's new about this is that the advertising that goes with it, so that we're getting the word out so people understand that there's consequences that have always been there. Nothing's new, nothing's changed, but we're just making it known for the people that are actually committing the crime. I know, Fred, you were going to say something.
Well, two things. One is a follow-up to your question, just to emphasize what the chief said. That is, as a federal prosecutor, I've stood in a federal courtroom, and we, at the arraignment, will read the defendants what the penalties are. And I can guarantee you that there are times when defendants will stand in federal court who've not been in federal court before, who hear the penalties and turn to their defense counsel and are not happy. The other thing in terms of why hasn't been done before, the reality is it's true. This has been an ongoing effort, at least as far as I'm concerned, since at least mid-2017, in terms of us working very closely, for example, with the DA's office. We've got a what we call special assistant U.S. attorneys. That's where we basically deputize assistant district attorneys to work in our office. They help facilitate the adopting state cases and bringing them over to our office. So the statistics in terms of the number of cases that we've adopted since mid-2017 is actually 500 cases that were taken from the state federally. And that it involves a process, because the point here is not the number. That's not what we're trying to get at. What we're trying to do is drive down the violent crime numbers by doing, and the way to do that is to focus on and try to identify the most dangerous offenders on the streets of Albuquerque. That's all part of this process. How do we figure out who the most dangerous offenders are? It's talking to these guys and the people that are out there on the streets that know who the offenders are. So that's first and foremost. We look at what their criminal history is. We look at their social media. Is this a person where the most effective, best avenue would be to bring federal charges against them? And that's not something that's new. It's something we have been dedicated to for the last several years with all of these partners up here.
So there's always plans to expand it, but it's always a resource kind of bind with our partners, and we understand that. But as I speak to you today, we're at 40 task force officers that are working with us side by side.
Is that specific in Albuquerque?
Yes. We'd like to say that, the problems is across the state. We're not, it's one thing that I think there's always a focus that we're just here. And, obviously because we have the cabinet secretary here as well, we're focused in the state itself. But the reality is that we have to make sure that we fix Albuquerque.
What is the challenge with expanding the task force? Because it seems like more members of this task force will help with the goal of more federal prosecutions, right?
It's always becomes just more task force officers that are working alongside us is less individuals that are going to be on the streets. So it's a matter of give and take. And there's always going to be a balance. It's never going to be a perfect balance, but we're going to try our best.
Do you expect the number of federal prosecutions to increase along this effort? Like, do you expect to be doing more a year?
I don't necessarily anticipate that the numbers are going to increase. I think that what this campaign is about is messaging and making sure, not the folks that are the law-abiding citizens out there, but hopefully that people who are inclined to be on our streets committing crimes get the message. And that's the point of this Billboard campaign in particular, is to try to augment what's already happening with the Violent Crime Task Force by messaging this to the people that need to hear this message. We're ready to charge you with federal crimes, and I've read you what those penalties are.
And is the man who was charged with shooting at the officer last week, Caleb Elledge, is he going to be charged federally?
As it stands right now, I'm not going to comment on any pending cases, but as it stands right now, he's facing state charges.